From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
You're listening to the Wildcast podcast. I'm Justin Spears here with Michael Lev, chopping it up, talking about Arizona and the Alamo Bowl. The Wildcats now 9-3, finishing the regular season strong with a big win over ASU. And now it's postseason time, and they know their opponent. They'll be facing the number 12 Oklahoma Sooners. So top 15 matchup for the Valero Alamo Bowl in San Antonio on December 28th. Before we get into the press conference that took place on Thursday, just want to remind everyone that you can check out the Wildcast podcast on Apple, Spotify, other podcasting platforms, and also on the Wildcaster mobile app. On the Wildcaster mobile app, you'll also find stories from my colleague Michael Lev, myself, PJ Brown, Bruce Pascoe, covering the top-ranked Arizona Wildcats team, men's basketball program. Hey, they got a big one on Saturday, Lev. Wisconsin coming to town.
Sure do. What are your fondest memories of Arizona against Wisconsin, if you have any fond memories?
Well, Arizona actually has some fond memories against Wisconsin. They beat them in the opening round of like the 2006 NCAA tournament, and they clobbered them by like 30 points. It just wasn't even a close game. Hassan Adams was playing for Arizona at that time, Hot Sauce. He was awesome to watch. Still the only player that I know that was a guard who did the opening tip. He was Arizona's shooting guard, and he did the opening tip because he could jump so high. Think about that.
Wow.
But, of course, we all know about the Elite Eights. Frank the Tank, Frank Kaminsky, and then the following year, Sam Decker went unconscious. Were you in Arizona at that time? Not the first one, but what about the second one?
I don't think so.
No?
When was
2015.
Yeah, I didn't get here until 15.
Late 2015?
Yeah. So, no, but I'm aware of it, of course. How was Frank the Tank received when he was a Phoenix Sun?
Bittersweet, wishy-washy. People are like, "Oh, really? This guy?" Kind of like the way when they signed Grayson Allen this year.
Yeah, I get it. Grayson Allen is sort of the guy that you kind of love to have on your team and hate him if he's on every other team.
Yeah,
I'm sure they've warmed up to him to a certain degree, and there haven't been any incidents that I'm aware of thus far where he's like tripped somebody or shoved somebody or done any of those kind of
kicking people,
Grayson Allen things.
Yeah,
that he's known for.
But yeah, Frank Kaminsky is kind of like Voldemort in Arizona basketball fandom. Like you don't mention him, you know about him, you know who. Him and Sam Decker, those two, kept Sean Miller from going to a couple of Final Fours. Them two and Kemba Walker in 2011. But yeah, Arizona versus Wisconsin. I feel bad for those poor kids. They're coming into McHale Center and they are going to get booed like no other. And it's
like, just like, what did we do?
We weren't a part of it. We were kids then, but it's going to be a great atmosphere at McHale Center this Saturday. I can't wait to see it on TV. But Lev, let's talk about Alamo Bowl.
Yeah.
So Arizona is going to the Alamo Bowl. They're playing a great opponent in Oklahoma. However, Oklahoma's a little bit shorthanded. A bunch of guys have been entering the transfer portal from them. A couple offensive linemen, running backs, defensive end, and more notably, their starting quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, the 2-year starter who is a guy who's been playing college football for a little while. He was a starter at UCF, then transferred to Oklahoma, and is one of the top passers in college football. Oklahoma has one of the top offenses in college football right now. In terms of passing offense, they are the fifth best. They are really good at throwing the football, but they're going to have some new guys leading the charge because Dylan Gabriel is no longer quarterbacking them, or at least we don't think he is. I mean, he's not. Brent Venables can keep sidestepping these questions about Dylan Gabriel, but we all know that he's in the transfer portal. He's looking at potentially going to Oregon, USC, maybe, Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. I think it's going to be one of those West Coast schools or maybe the NFL. But you're not going to have your starting quarterback. And then on top of that, Jeff Lebby, the guy who I just mentioned, he was the former OC at Oklahoma. Now he's at Mississippi State. So you're going to have co-offensive coordinators, Joe John Finley, and also Seth Luttrell, a former Arizona offensive coordinator who was the head coach at North Texas. I don't imagine them really changing things up. I think they're just going to keep everything the way it is. Seth Luttrell might throw a wrinkle here or there. He's been known to do that, but it's going to be very much the offense that you saw from Jeff Lebby, but still up-tempo offense no matter who's playing quarterback. But we think Jackson Arnold, the former 5-star All-American, will be playing quarterback. So it's going to be an interesting matchup, Lev.
Yeah, I mean, this is not uncommon at all, as Coach Venables mentioned during the press conference down in San Antonio this morning. I mean, a lot of teams are going through this right now. Here at the Arizona Bowl, Toledo's quarterback, MAC Player of the Year, Daquan Finn, he's in the portal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the clean solution is to sort of saving the sanctity of the bowl games, the schedule. All this stuff happens in December, and all this stuff happens before the bowl games take place. So your roster can really be ravaged if you're in a certain place and time with your program, a certain situation where you lose a coach, or you didn't have the season that you were hoping to have. I feel like Arizona is not in that position.
No.
They're on the upswing, and a lot of guys are happy with their situations and their playing time. And if you look at the 6 or 7 players from Arizona who are in the portal, the latest one being Cruz Rushing, I mean, none of them were starters this past year. Some of them played on special teams. Some of them didn't play at all. So you're talking about role players at this point. I think there are 2 issues for Oklahoma in this game. One, of course, is the quarterback transition situation. Jackson Arnold, big-time recruit. Did play a little bit this year, completed 75% of his passes, 18 of 24, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Of course, it's different, like starting and playing a whole game against a very good Arizona defense. And then 3 of their running backs are in the portal, including their second and 4th leading rushers. So they're going to be really shorthanded in the running back room. I don't know what kind of depth they have. In that usually teams have 4 or 5 scholarship running backs. So, they're probably going to have to call upon those guys. Brent Venables did say several guys will likely be making the first starts of their careers, maybe, or of the season at least, in this game. So he was trying to spin it in a positive way. He was like, this is an opportunity. We're starting to build toward 2024. I don't think Arizona is seeing it that way. You wrote today about how Jed is viewing this as a championship opportunity.
Yep.
I think it's really important for him and for them to become the 3rd team in program history to win 10 games.
Yep.
Right? Which we were looking it up a minute ago. Oklahoma's done that 42 times. They've only not done it in this century 5 times. So 19 of 24 years, and one of those is the COVID year, have they not won double digits.
Unreal.
At Oklahoma. So different kind of program pedigrees, but I mean, I would say Arizona's in a better spot in terms of the portal and their personnel heading into the game.
So many Arizona fans, when they heard you talk about Oklahoma winning all those games for so many years, they're like, yes, thank goodness they're leaving.
Great point. No, it's so true. It's so true. You're going into a Big 12 next year that won't have the 2 biggest heavyweights in the conference forever and ever, Texas and Oklahoma. They're the ones who started this whole mess of realignment, really. I mean, there were Texas A&M and Missouri way back when, but those weren't seismic shifts in this sport.
Absolutely.
Like when Texas and Oklahoma went to the SEC, that was like, whoa. And then, it was like one summer later, USC and UCLA. That was one of the most shocking pieces of news that I can ever remember coming across.
It didn't seem real.
It did not
at first. No. I saw that headline. I'm like, there's no way. I never thought I'd ever see the day where the Pac-12 just simply wouldn't exist. I thought the Pac-12 would be infinite forever. That's just how it is, right? And then things happen.
John Wilner broke that story. Our Pac-12 hotline colleague. By the way, the spread, consensus Vegas spread right now is Arizona by 2.5. It has gone up from 1.5. I'm going to guess if the
I've
Dylan
seen 4.5
Gabriel
some
news
places.
have you? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it feels like maybe it should be a little higher.
Really?
And as we know, Arizona's been a really good bet this year.
Best team against the spread, or one of them. But it is going to be a road game for Arizona, I would say, right?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Are Oklahoma fans going to travel for this? Are they excited about this? Are they bitter that they didn't get into the New Year's Six? They didn't get a chance to play in the Big 12 championship game? I don't know. I mean, a great and rabid fan base, to be sure. But they might just sort of view this as, whatever, just another bowl game. There's a funny quick story for you. When I was covering USC, they got to a point, this is going to sound so crazy, they actually got to a point at USC where the Rose Bowl was just kind of like, whatever.
Consolation prize.
Yeah,
we didn't get to the Natty, so we'll take
sort
it.
of, which seems like completely insane, especially considering the state of that program right now. They'd love to play in a Rose Bowl again. Where are they going? Holiday Bowl?
Holiday Bowl.
Yeah.
San Diego. So it's crazy. I was actually thinking about this recently. Has the Alamo Bowl passed the Holiday Bowl in terms of prestige?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's...
Because before it was always like, hey, if you didn't go to the Rose Bowl, you go to the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, that's pretty damn cool. Now it seems like the Alamo Bowl's kind of leaped the Holiday Bowl in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way to quantify that, but I think it's true.
Yeah.
And just look at the matchup. I mean, number 12 versus number 14, right? Pretty much the best matchup of any bowl game outside of the CFP and the New Year's Six. Mm-hmm. So that pretty much says it all. It's a very big deal today, that press conference. I mean, how many people were in that Zoom? Good Lord. A lot of people cover Oklahoma football.
A lot of people cover
Oklahoma football. It was like, whoa, we're not in Tucson anymore.
Yeah.
This ain't Tucson. Isn't that your gambit?
Yeah, I will be, or it's a series that I started this year where I eat the food that is pretty much of the city that we travel to, wherever the Wildcats are. And yeah, I'll be trying out some Tex-Mex. I mean, I had Tex-Mex when I was there for the tournament a couple years ago, but I'll be doing my food review out there.
Are you going to participate in this Buc-ee's outing that Brian Peterson keeps pumping up?
I don't know. I mean, if I have time, sure. But
Brian Peterson, our colleague over at AZ Desert Swarm.
Yeah, the thing about Buc-ee's though is that they're always in obscure towns. They put them in cities where you're in between, right? When you're on your way from Austin to San Antonio or other cities in Texas. So it's not really close by. So, hey, if Brian's up to drive and I have time, yeah, I'm totally down.
He's always up to drive, so
sure.
I think you could definitely tag along for that outing.
Yeah, Buc-ee's is like Costco and QT put together. It's one of the coolest things ever. And a Bass Pro Shop.
Mailbag time?
Okay. Yeah, let's answer some mailbag questions.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys for submitting those. Lev, you want to start us off with any of your mailbag questions?
Sure.
Cool.
Okay. All right, let's start with this one. It's from AZCatsDude50. What do they feel is their position of need the most when they see who is in the portal? I think I've been pretty consistent about this, and I will reiterate the stance. Defensive line, number one.
Yeah.
For sure. When you look at Arizona's team right now, like, let's say that there's a top-level cornerback or safety that's on the portal. Like, would that player want to come here assuming that none of Arizona's guys leave? Like, you're not going to start next year. Sorry, those positions are all locked down. If you're a weak side linebacker, you're not going to start, right? The other linebacker position, maybe, that one's still pretty wide open. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are freshmen this year who are going to be in the mix for that next year. Even the offensive line, I mean, maybe one spot at the most. But you've got Raymond Polito coming back, Wendell Moe's coming back, Josh Baker's coming back, and Jonas Saba-Enea is coming back. Running back room, I mean, maybe if you haven't landed somewhere else, sort of like a DJ Williams, but you're going to have Jonah Coleman and those two really exciting freshmen coming in here. Wide receiver.
Who knows what Brandon Johnson's got?
Wide receiver, I feel like
Rayshawn Luke.
They like the young guys. They like Malachi Riley. They like Kevin Green. If A.J. Jones sticks around, he's got a lot of potential. And, of course, T-Mac is going to be back. They have built their team kind of the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
So they don't have a ton of openings. The area, to me, where they stand to lose the most production is the defensive line. And that was really one of the keys to their defensive turnaround this year, was bringing in those big veteran linemen to occupy blockers, to enable them to have this robust rotation so that guys are fresh throughout games. I mean, there's a reason that Arizona kind of got better like each quarter of a game, and it's because of that defense.
Yeah. And they can still potentially return guys from that mix.
Bill Norton could come back.
He
could. Tyler Manoa, I think, is done. Co's done. Taylor Upshaw's done.
Yeah.
So those are some,
productive guys.
Big, important, productive players. They have young guys coming up through the pipeline who've played a lot. But I think they would like to recreate that mix of young guys and veterans.
All right, this one comes from Reggie Spengler. With regard to the $8 million Alamo Bowl payout, is there a realistic chance that the Pac-2 will try to withhold this money from the departing conference members? And I think this
is a great question.
It's a great question.
Right? John Wilner, whom I mentioned earlier, he's been writing about this subject quite a bit. It's up to the courts, basically. And I think what's going to happen at the end of the day, when it comes to these bowl payouts, as well as the NCAA tournament units, which is a pretty big deal for Arizona, right? To get that money, is I think they're going to reach a settlement at some point. Do we really think that Oregon State and Washington State are going to get all the money?
No.
But do we think they're going to get nothing? I don't think so.
It sounds like a nasty divorce.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's kind of like a divorce. And a lot of those divorces are settled through mediation.
Yeah.
Right? Sit everybody down in a room. What's the percentage?
Who wants this asset?
I think that just as a sort of uneducated guess here, because I'm not a legal expert by any means, but I'm going to guess that Oregon State and Washington State will get better than 1/6, which is 2 out of 12, right? I think they're going to get higher than that, but it's going to be less than 50%.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing numbers out there, but
that's a pretty good guess.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is from 1 Foot on Saturday. In an NFL where unders are hitting at a 60% plus rate, I am more concerned with offensive-minded Jedd Fisch leaving for the NFL than another college football program, like the ones in Gainesville or Ann Arbor. A valid concern? Thanks, guys. Bear down. That's a really good question, and it's still to be determined. I mean, I would assume that several NFL jobs are going to be opening up here very soon, and some of them could have connections to Jedd Fisch. Jedd Fisch has coached in the NFL for 13 years. He's been around the block once or twice in that league and has developed a lot of connections, knows a lot of people in the NFL, and has been part of organizations that I'm sure would love to bring in Mr. Jed Lasso to lead the team, a guy who is really good at developing a really good play caller. Like we've seen when he's got a full deck of cards, what he's able to do as an offensive play caller. In 2021, it was like all bubble screens of Stanley Berryhill. And I'm like, really? That's all you got? Like, where is this offensive play calling genius that is Jedd Fisch? And then once he finally was able to bring ingredients to the kitchen, you started to see this mad chef whip up all these great recipes and meals. And the play calling has been a lot better now that Arizona's gotten more talent. And if you're an NFL coach or an NFL owner and you're like, you know what? This guy is positive. He's great in media, great PR person. He markets himself, markets the program. I would love to bring him into my franchise and we can win Super Bowls with this guy. That's the kind of coach that Jedd Fisch is, and I'm sure that he would be on a lot of NFL radars.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest looming threat, at least in this particular coaching carousel, is the NFL. There are no college jobs that would appeal to Jedd Fisch, I don't think, at the moment. So it's a question of, what does he want to do? Is that what he wants to do long term? Does he want to be an NFL coach, or does he want to be a college coach and maybe stay here for a while or wait for Florida to open up, his alma mater, and do that? But I think that when you look around the NFL landscape, the New England Patriots might be making a regime change. They might have a top 3 pick in the draft to get a quarterback. Your team, the LA Chargers, already has a franchise quarterback. Now, I will say, Jed is always begging for people to show up to games and stuff. Chargers, that ain't it, man. Unless if you want to go somewhere where half the stadium or more is opposing team fans, then maybe that's the job. But I don't know.
You don't
maybe
go on Silent Count at Arizona
Sean McVay, I don't know where he's at right now, but he's got connections with the Rams, the Seahawks. Pete Carroll is in his 60s. He's not going to be there forever. So this question kind of dovetails with that, and I'll hand it to you. When are we getting this new Fisch contract? They need to get this done for recruiting purposes. This comes from that Arizona fan at Bear Down Cats with a Z. What is your sourcing and reporting telling you about the timeline of a Fisch contract extension?
It's going to be a while. It could be weeks, maybe months. I don't know. But don't expect it anytime soon.
That probably comes as a surprise to people. We've kind of figured it was just a matter of figuring out all the details, dotting the I's, crossing the T's. So let's get this done.
There are a lot of things happening behind the scenes. And what we know as of now is that there's nothing really in place. Now, there have been conversations. Don't get me wrong. It's not like Dave Hickey, Robbins. It's not like the University of Arizona is just completely ignoring it. They are fully aware of Jedd Fisch needing a contract extension, and they want to go about this the right way. They want to make sure that they do right by Jed and that they give him the dollar amount that he likes and also his staff. That's one thing that Jedd Fisch emphasized was, hey, I just don't want my contract reworked. I want to increase the salary pool for our assistant coaches so that way we're able to keep Johnny Nansen and Kevin Cummings and all these great assistant coaches around. It's not just Jedd Fisch. It's Jedd Fisch's village. He's just the one who's overseeing the whole operation. And when you have programs that are that have deeper pockets and are able to go after your assistant coaches, you have to be able to fend them off. And getting them the right money is the right way to do it. So I think that Jed wants to make sure that his assistants get paid. He also gets paid, and that they're in a really good position moving forward. And I think that Dave Hickey and everyone else behind the scenes is really trying to figure out a way to get boosters, donors, and a lot of people behind all of this. Because if you want to compete at the biggest level, especially when you're at the big boy table, once Arizona goes to the Big 12, and you're in a new era of college athletics where you're with the heavy hitters, you want to be able to financially compete with the rest of these schools, because that way you're able to bring in top talent and also win national championships, and then it just brings in more money to your university.
I think another factor in this is the university financial crisis. Not because they don't have the money or won't be able to come up with the money, but from a PR standpoint, considering how much controversy there is around this topic, how much criticism, vitriol, infighting, backstabbing. How would it look if they announced a huge contract extension for Jedd Fisch right now? President Robbins has that meeting with ABOR, the Arizona Board of Regents, coming up on the 15th. I think that they probably would like this all to kind of blow over a little bit before announcing a contract extension for the coach. And I also don't think he's going anywhere right now. I also think if the NFL is really what the competition is, Arizona, there's not much they can do if he wants to leave.
Yeah.
I think they need to do right by him and do the right thing and give him what he deserves and give his coaches what they deserve to keep the band together. But I think those are some of the other factors. So this question is kind of related to that also. It comes from Chris Halligan. Which coaches on the current staff seem like they'll be head coaches someday?
Good question.
What do you think?
To me, I never thought that Brennan Carroll would ever become a head coach. Like, to me, he's so cool, and I think he enjoys like being the guy who works behind the scenes and just coaches. But the people that I've spoken to have told me that Brennan Carroll would love to become a head coach someday, and he obviously comes from head coaching background with his pops, Pete Carroll, as head coach of the Seahawks and a longtime coach at USC and other places. Maybe he decides, you know what, now is the time. Now that I'm older and, you know, wiser, I've got more football experience, I've seen everything on multiple levels, I'm ready to take that next step and follow my father's path. So I would probably say Brennan Carroll, maybe somewhere down the road, Kevin Cummings. It fascinates me, Lev, whenever I find out how old Kevin Cummings is. Like, he's only like a few years older than me. And like, I'm a really young guy, and he's just so smart. And when you talk to him, you don't realize that he's in his early 30s. He just is so wise beyond his years. And I think eventually at some point, if he really wants to, he could become a head coach, because he's a really good leader and a very positive person and a guy who really carries himself well.
Yeah, I think the question that I have when it comes to a lot of these guys, and I think there are a lot of guys on the staff who are head coach material someday. I think Jimmy Doherty, the quarterback's coach, is another one. Yeah. His father is a coach. That's
a good one.
Is a coach, so he's been in that world for a long time, and he's young, and pretty impressive speaker. Scotty Graham is a really impressive speaker, but he's just started coaching a couple years ago. Hadn't really been on that side, and I think he's in a good spot as a running backs coach. Jordan Paopao is another one who's very impressive with the media. And that's the thing that I was referring to. It's like, do you want to take on all of the other responsibilities that come with this job, right? Like, if you're Jed Fish right now, you heard him the other day, all the things that are on his list. Like, he's got to deal with the portal. He's got to deal with recruiting. He's got to fly to San Antonio for a press conference. He's got to do media appearances. Oh, and by the way, yeah, he's like, I've got Oklahoma film on my computer upstairs. I do that too. Like, in my spare time, I'm breaking down film and coming up with a game plan for us for this huge game that's coming up. So, if you're Brennan Carroll, do you want to have to talk to the media 3 times a week? And be responsible for everything? I don't know. I haven't never asked him about it, so I don't know. But I think he's impressed a lot of people since he's been here.
Absolutely.
The way he's not only handled himself, but the way he's coached up the offensive line.
Okay, so we got some more mailbag questions. This one comes in from Sug Rich. They ask, how do we feel going into next season with a bowl game W? What about a loss? Can a negative result touch these good feelings of an accomplished season and ever-rising capabilities of the Jedi Fish program?
Oh, nice.
I like what he did there. It was right there in front of us, Jedi Fish. So I honestly, a win would certainly put Arizona in the conversation as potentially a top 10 team going into next season. Think about this. Like, they're already on the outside looking in on this CFP if it was extended this year. They're number 14 in the country.
Pretty close, though. Pretty close.
Pretty damn close to making the CFP this year. If you return a lion's share of your players, and you also maybe add in a couple transfers to plug up some holes and really add depth, and they're as productive as the transfers were this past year, then we could be looking at Arizona as a possibly top 10 team going into next season. Because all these 2022 recruiting class guys, these prospects, are all going to be another year older, and they're all going into their draft eligible year, where guys are going to be competing for their stock. T-Mac will be a junior. Jacob Manu will also be a junior as well. Noah Fafita will have essentially a full season under his belt. So now he comes in not as a new starter for Jaden Delore, who just left the program, and now you got to kind of work Noah Fafita in early in the season. Noah Fafita is a seasoned veteran going into next season. So I think that Arizona, regardless, is going to be in a really good position next year, whether they win or lose. But, man, a win would certainly have you feeling high and mighty.
Yeah, I think one of the side effects of Oklahoma not having all their guys and not having their quarterback is the expectation shift a little bit for this game. Like, I think most people think Arizona's going to win, right? Because Oklahoma's not going to be at full strength. And if they don't, man, how disappointing would that be? But I think if it's a close game, back and forth, and they end up losing, it's really not the end of the world at all. It doesn't diminish the accomplishments of the season one bit. It might hurt a little bit when it comes to, like, preseason top 25s and that sort of thing. My question, I wrote, like, why can't Arizona be the next Washington? Like, Washington played in the Alamo Bowl. They went 7-2 in the conference. They won their last 6 games of the regular season. Now they're in the CFP. Next year, there's 8 more teams are going to be in the CFP. Why can't Arizona do that? Well, let me ask you this, Justin. When the schedule next year includes at Kansas State in a non-conference game, at BYU, at TCU, at UCF, just to name a few, can they get through? Can they get through all that? Basically, I would say you have to go. You can't lose more than 2 games. 2 games is probably the number. Can they get through all that, with only 2 losses? That's not going to be easy at all.
But, hey, the Pac-12 was really good this year, too.
I was. It's true.
And they got through a lot of big wins for Arizona this year. All right, so this one comes from Sean Parker. Sean Parker asked, besides the players that have announced their transfer from OU, that we should know, what should we know about the Sooners' remaining roster? Are there any odd matchups or key pieces to the roster the Cats should look out for? Consistent listener here. Thanks to you and Lev for doing what you do.
Oh,
Thank you for listening.
That's nice.
Really nice, Sean. Thank you for those kind words, my friend. Honestly, I haven't really dove into too much of OU game prep. I really need to start looking at some of their players, but I do know that they, no matter who's playing quarterback, they're going to have an up-tempo offense. So I would just look for OU to really get into a rhythm, and I'm wondering how that's going to affect, Arizona's defensive line rotation, or will Arizona really emphasize that thing that they do where they kind of slow up the defensive linemen coming off the field, and maybe that throws Oklahoma out of rhythm. It's going to be kind of a chess match between Johnny Nansen, Arizona's defensive coordinator, and also Seth Luttrell.
3rd in the nation in scoring offense, 43.2 points per game, I think is the figure that I just saw.
Yeah.
5th in the nation in yards per game. They are 13th nationally in yards per play. Interestingly, Arizona is actually ahead of them in that. Arizona is 11th in the nation in yards per play, which is a very important statistic. Brent Venables is known for defense. He was an elite defensive coordinator at Clemson, and Oklahoma was not very good defensively a year ago when they had a sort of shocking 6-7 season. This year, 81st nationally in yards allowed per game. In terms of yards allowed per play, Oklahoma is 55th at 5.37, which is pretty respectable. It's kind of a wide open league. The Big 12, similar to the Pac-12, you're going to get in a lot of high-scoring games. I think this is going to be kind of a shootout type of game. I know Arizona's defense has played so well, and they've kind of shut everybody down. Jackson Arnold is sort of the variable, the X factor that we don't know how he's going to play.
Yeah,
he could be amazing, or he could have that deer in the headlights thing going on. But I expect kind of a wild, high-scoring back and forth game in this one.
And maybe this turns into Arizona versus Washington, but the other way around, where Arizona Oklahoma, they have the new quarterback who's making his first start and is kind of settling in, trying to figure out college football. And if Arizona can get up on these guys early and force the true freshmen to play from behind, you're going to be at a very significant advantage. Okay, so this one also from Sean Parker. We got a twofer from him. He says, are we worried about the decommits we've recently seen for the 2024 class, or are these players Arizona decided to stop recruiting / part ways with? That's interesting because I've heard a lot of good things about Kwamari Shemwell, the cornerback from SoCal who's now going to Utah. He flipped his commitment. But, there are just some other, commits or decommits that just Arizona, I think, stopped recruiting. Also, they have connections to players who are no longer on the team, like the Patu brothers. Oren Patu, the former Cal transfer, he announced that he's going into the portal once again. And then, in addition to that, his brother Kaio Patu, a safety from Seattle, he decommitted from Arizona's 2024 class. So outside of that, I wouldn't be worried about Arizona's decommitments. There's always a lot of activity leading up to the early signing period, and I think that's probably would be the case for Arizona. And then, hey, there's always a transfer portal. There are thousands and thousands of players in the transfer portal that you can choose from. I think Arizona could, in their NFL background, can find a player or two.
Yeah, not an exaggeration. I am at the point with this coaching staff where I trust their judgment when it comes to talent evaluation. We've also seen Jed Fish and his staff pull off these kind of last-minute flips and pulling some guys in in the final stages of the cycle. So I would expect that. They currently have 18 commits. They're probably going to, I would guess they'll get into the low 20s.
Yeah.
That was interesting today. Brent Venables was like throwing out all kinds of numbers. Like, we're going to have this many guys come in mid-year, and we're going to have this many new players and all this kind of stuff. Like, he seemed to really know exactly what they were doing. But, yeah, the decommitment thing, it's usually a two-way street, And you also have to factor in NIL. That's the thing sometimes. Sometimes NIL lures people away.
Yeah.
It's a different class than this past year in that there's a lot of skill position players up at the top. Last year's class was a little under the radar, linemen, This class, the headliners are running back Jordan Washington, who we saw in person and put on an absolute show. Down in Southern California, the game we attended. Damon Williams, the quarterback from Arizona. The next rated guy on 247's list is Audric Harris, who's a wide receiver. They have the most prolific wide receiver in Arizona high school history coming in Brandon Phelps. So, I wouldn't worry too much about it at this point. I know that people look at them being ranked 47th in their recruiting class, and they kind of expect more than that. But I trust the coaching staff. People need to be patient. They'll come through. And like you said, you can always supplement the class through the portal.
Yep.
I have one more.
Let's do it.
And it's two questions from Winston Dan. The first one is, will Coach Fish bring back the number 1 jersey next year? And the second question is, I heard that Utah has had over 90 extra practices because of bowl game invites. Do the rich get richer with more reps? So that number 1 jersey thing was kind of, I don't know, it was like they played it up for a while and then they kind of downplayed it, and it wasn't really that big of a thing.
Or maybe guys just didn't want to be number 1. Like, they have their numbers that they really want, and number 1 just for this year just isn't that number.
I could see Traden Stukes being a guy who does that, and that if he did it, it would be his 4th different number.
Oh man,
since he's been here, which is kind of hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But he fits the mold of kind of the guy who does everything right.
Yeah,
that sort of thing. I think I heard Noah Fafita say that he was interested in that number, but they gave him 11 when he got here, and he kind of likes 11. It's kind of number 1. Number 1 times 2.
Maybe he's the guy.
So can you explain, this 90 practices thing, can you explain what he's talking about?
Yeah, so Jed Fish was saying that Arizona gets 90 practice, or Utah has gotten 90 practices, allegedly, since 2017.
Yeah,
the last
the
time
math
Arizona made a bowl
being
game.
15 bowl practices per year times 6.
Yes. So 15 bowl practices times 6, 90. And when you compare that to training camp, Arizona gets 28 days for training camp. So 28, you do the math, like more than double, nearly 3 times the amount of training camps. That's a lot of reps that you're getting to your young guys, to your developing players, and that's what's so key to developing that consistency. And Jed Fish has really emphasized that, like, yes, this is great, what Arizona's been able to do this year, but they want to be able to replicate it time and time again. And if you're able to compete in these bowl games and get that extra time together, then you're going to be able to build success and have a program that's going to win a lot of bowl games and be successful.
Yeah, I think one of the sort of differences between Arizona and Oklahoma going into this game is that Arizona is giving these young players these opportunities to get reps just because they haven't gotten reps and they need the work and it'll help them in the long term. Whereas Oklahoma, they might have to play some of these guys in the game, So that's a bit of a different story. But I think there's great value in the bowl practices. It's more opportunities to learn and grow.
And you get a better idea of
it's a bonus.
Your guys for next year or spring ball.
Yeah, 1,000%. Someone could stand out. We might see some guys, by the way, in this game that we haven't seen all season. Like the guy I think of the most in that regard is maybe Brandon Johnson, the freshman running back. Because if you remember in the Territorial Cup, DJ Williams didn't play because of injury, and Jonah Coleman got hurt during that game. We have no idea what the status of those guys is.
Yeah.
You still have Michael Wiley. You still have Rayshawn Luke. Naz Babada, the walk-on, got a carry in that game. But I could see, possible one-game activation for someone like Brandon Johnson if they're shorthanded.
Yeah. Maybe more of the younger wide receivers, maybe.
Maybe like a Leviticus Sua gets thrown in on special teams because they've lost some of their special teams guys to the portal.
That's a good point.
Someone like that, freshman linebacker, highly touted, didn't play this year. So, I don't know. Bowl season full of surprises and unknowns.
And Leviticus Sua, I mean, he could be a guy that starts next to Manu next year.
Absolutely.
He could just rise out of nowhere because think about this. Did we ever think Isaiah Ward would be starting? Honestly, I thought Isaiah Ward or the Ward brothers might be like transfer portal guys, guys who just didn't get playing time and are going to leave. And then lo and behold, you got Isaiah Ward starting every single game on the defensive line for Air. Or maybe not every single game. I got to double check that.
But close to it,
but pretty much every single game. And then Anthony Ward getting a big punt block return for a touchdown against Utah. It's a pretty good year for the Ward bros. You just never know who's going to come up.
Yeah, you do. It is true. You never know. I think that unless they bring in some surefire guy from the portal, I think middle linebacker is going to be a wide open competition in the spring and maybe into the fall.
No doubt. With
a lot of candidates for the job. Justin Flo, we thought he was going to be the guy, and he didn't seize the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the future holds for him, but they brought in 3 linebackers in this last year's class that they really like. And I think those guys are going to fight it out.
I got a mailbag question for you, Lev.
Yeah.
Were you surprised at all by Arizona's placement in the All Pac-12 selections? Just like in terms of players that made the All Pac-12 teams, I thought that maybe there would be more second team.
Is this from you,
selections.
by the way?
This is from me.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is from at Justin Esports.
Yes. This is coming straight from me because Jacob Manu making the first team, also Jordan Morgan, really good selections, rock solid guys. I thought maybe T-Mac may have snuck in there. I know that there are great wide receivers in the Pac-12. Troy Franklin, Roman Dunze, great guys. But T-Mac's 8th nationally in receiving yards.
Also played one fewer game than Troy Franklin and Roma Dunze. 12 games versus 13.
That is true.
All right, I'm glad you asked this question because I voted for the AP Pac-12 teams. I don't think they've come out quite yet, but they're coming very soon. So I went through every bit of data that you could possibly come up with, and I voted, and I try to take bias out of the equation and only look at the facts. But I voted for T-Mac, first team, along with the Dunze. I voted for Wendell Moe first team. Did he
Whoa.
even make honorable mention? I don't know if he did. But it was guard. Guard was a tough position in the league. There weren't a ton of standouts. Like there's great tackles and a great center in Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, but guard was a tough one. I voted Tanner McLachlan first team. Like he had the most catches and the most yards of any tight end in the conference. So
honorable mention.
I don't know what the deal is there. I also voted for Takario Davis first team. Most pass breakups in the conference, among the most pass breakups in the nation. If he had been able to catch some of those, turn them interceptions, he'd probably be an All-American this year. So I voted for all those guys for the first team. I didn't have anybody, oddly enough, from Arizona on the second team this year. And I also voted for Jed Fish for Coach of the Year.
Which he did
Which
not
is
get.
really tough call between him and Kalen DeBoer. And I understand all the Kalen DeBoer arguments. I could see it going both ways. I just feel like, when you look at where they were before to where they are now, it's an incredible accomplishment.
But also season expectations, too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was Washington voted to win the
preseason top 10, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I think USC was the pick.
Oh, yeah.
But preseason top 10. So
among the favorites to win the conference.
Yes, exactly.
Where was Arizona? 8th. 8th of the preseason media poll, Ev.
Where do you think they're going to be in the
third.
Big 12 media poll? Top 5, right?
They'll definitely be in the top half for sure. I mean, because they're going to be a top 15 team going into next year, I would say. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then you're certainly a top 4 or 5 team in the Big 12. So yeah, I was curious to get your thoughts on all that. Okay, well that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and also find all the coverage on Arizona Wildcats football, basketball, and Southern Arizona sports at Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. Thanks for listening.